Okay, well, welcome. I see we have a few people on the call on the webinar. Our final key webinar for the project, I'm looking to wait for a few more people to join us. Let me see who's on the list of attendees. So, again, for those of you who are on the call, and if you haven't called in yet so that you can participate in the discussion, just a reminder that if you want to call in and interact and be part of the discussion and ask questions, you can go to the Event Info tab at the top of your event screen and get the call-in information. And then, as I said, when you call in, you'll be able to interact, ask questions. I just want to do a check-in. So I heard someone on the line. Who's calling in right now?
You have Monique and Anne-Marie Pedersen Craig.
Hi, Monique. Hi, Anne-Marie.
Hi, Jim. This is Lydia from MHA Dutchess.
Hi, Lydia.
Hi.
This is Mel Barvinchak from Greater Binghamton.
Great. And Mel. Greater Binghamton. Okay. Anyone else? I see the numbers going up. Anyone else who's joined on the call?
Well, Lisa Florence is with me. She'll be right here.
Okay, great.
Danielle Perullo from Federation of Organization Pros.
No. Okay, anyone else? Okay, well, as people call, I'll do periodic check-ins to see who else has joined. And once you do join by phone, just announce yourself as well.
All right, Julie Simpson is here from MHA Dutchess.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Well, as I said, we got a lot to cover, so if you join in, please feel free to announce yourself, and as I said, I'll do periodic check-ins. And I want to thank you all for attending our final key webinar. I hope today that we'll be able to cover a lot of ground with regards to kind of summarizing the project and talking a little bit about the successes that we've had.
Hi, this is Sarah Tillotson from GVHC.
Hi, Sarah. Okay. Okay. There we go. All right, so our agenda for today is I'm going to do a little update of the project, give you a little bit of data that we've been able to collect since the end of the project, and then some quantitative data, some of our measures and numbers that we have, and then I also want to share feedback. I've had an opportunity to do some focus group interviews with participants at a number of our sites, and so I have some interview data that I'd like to share as far as sort of feedback we've gotten so far. And then I want to hear from you all. A couple of our programs have agreed to give a little update on their successes, but also their future plans, because I do want to spend some time talking a little bit about where sites are going with Key, and then I want to end with a little bit about where we plan on going with Key and what we plan on doing next. So that's our agenda for today. And with that said, I want to go into some basic information. So again, our performance indicators were somewhat brief. This looks a little bit longer, but what we wanted to get in terms of performance was some simple data: attendance and discontinuation forms, the number of kids who've dropped out, the helpfulness scale, which unfortunately we weren't able to get as many. Those were embedded in the workbooks themselves, and I would say that we didn't get many of those back. So I won't focus on that too much. The personal progress checklist was also in the workbook, and it was the part of the workbook in the appendix that looked at individual goals that young people had set up for themselves. Again, we didn't get too many of those back. We have gotten them, and we will try to take a look at those. And then towards the end of the project, we added this future orientation scale that we wanted to try to get from participants at the sites, and we were able to get a number of those, so I can share some of that information. I also conducted some site visits and looked at the workbooks to see what young people were completing from the workbooks, how much of it they had actually done. I'm not going to share that data. We don't have that data because we're still kind of trying to figure out how to use it, but I will mention a little bit about the workbook data and what I'd seen on the site visits. There was a lot of variability, so I can mention that. And as I said, I did some focus groups and interviews with some of the facilitators at our sites, not the kids, not the young people, but people who used the workbook. And so those are some of the things that I'm going to cover today. The first thing I wanted to mention just in terms of program participation, and actually this was shared at the mid-project webinar. Not much has changed, but I just wanted to sort of show a little bit about how many programs participated. So we had 44 agencies that applied, 42 participated in training, came to the training. In terms of agencies that implemented the program, about 29 programs implemented KEY on some level. It may have been small groups, it may have been large groups, it may have been multiple groups. But 29 of those trained agencies implemented KEY at some level. And there are still, at the mid-project webinar and now, some agencies that, again, still have the intention to start but haven't been able to get off the ground. And then a few agencies that unfortunately kind of just dropped off the grid a little bit, so we weren't able to follow up and see to what extent they participated. And so in terms of the data we were able to get back, for those of you who have not sent us data on your groups, that's okay. We're open to collecting more data, and I can talk a little bit later on about why that'll be important. But for the time being, the data that we're going to be presenting today is based on 13 of our sites who've sent in some data. That represents 20 groups. So again, as I said, some sites had multiple groups, so we have data on more than the number of sites. The number of youth who, again, we have data for is 217. The average number of youth per group was 10.8. Again, a lot of variability there in terms of the number of kids in the groups. So you could see there that the range of the group sizes went from 4 small groups to up to 14 youth in a group. And so this is the attendance data that we got. And this represents about 10 of our sites. I'm sorry, excuse me. This was our mid-project. At mid-project, this was our attendance data. So we had attendance from about 10 of our sites, and you could see the variability there. And if you look at the line across the middle, the dotted line across the middle, our average attendance across all the sites was 60%. Not bad for a group. And you could also see, of course, there's a lot of variability. So as low as 35% in one group to as high as 86%. That was at mid-project. The other thing I want to highlight about the attendance data is that we just went strictly by the number of kids who were enrolled in the group, and we used the same denominator. In other words, this includes kids who may have dropped out. And so in some ways, it's a little bit of an underestimation of the attendance because, again, we included kids who dropped out, but we still just took their attendance as is, meaning we used the same denominator to the number of groups. If we were to look at those kids who dropped out and just take them out of the analysis or just judge them based on the number of groups they attended, the attendance would look a little better. So that was in mid-project. And then this is now, so we got a little bit more data in from sites. We have about 20 sites, as I said, that participated in this sort of analysis, and so this is the data that we have. And again, you could see the variability there ranging from 33% up to 85%. Similarly, though, our attendance rate was about 60% across all sites. So, so kids attended group at a pretty good rate. And as I said, similar to what I said about the mid-project webinar data, it goes for this data as well. We did not take kids out if they dropped out. We included them all. So these rates probably are a little bit higher. And discontinuation, so again, we wanted to find out what discontinuation, why kids stopped coming. The average number of youth who discontinued from various groups was 1.3, not many. Again, your individual experiences at your groups may be different, but this also reflects that some of our group had, again, very high attendance rates. The primary reasons for discontinuation, you could see the list there, but I highlighted the one at the bottom, opted to no longer attend, typically around the group and, you know, the content and or it meeting their needs. And so you see very few kids who reported dropping out because of that. And again, there may be more examples of kids who did that. There may be different, we may have more data coming in, so individual site experiences may be different around that. But as far as what the data we have right now, it doesn't look like that kids dropped out, again, because he didn't meet their needs or they didn't want to participate in Key. And then this is some of the stuff on future orientation. So as I said, for those of you who may not have gotten this, we added this to our indicators late in the game. And so we asked sites to see if we could fill out, if we can get the young people to fill out a measure of future orientation. The measure of future orientation is simply that. It's a 12-item scale that's intended to have kids look at their beliefs about possible, you know, sort of positive outcomes in their lives, things about their economic status, their ability to live independently, their ability to live happy lives and live healthy lives. It's short. It was 12 items. And so you see here we were able to collect a number of future orientation scales. And again, this is all pretty raw data, so we're literally, up until this call, still getting data, putting it in, and analyzing it. So this is just very descriptive data. We were able to get future orientation scales at 5 of our sites. If you want us to get you the future orientation scales and you still think that you can get it from your young people, let us know. I'll check in towards the end of the call so you can let us know, and we would like to get more of these. But we had 5 sites who were able to collect the future orientation scales, 7 groups, about 109 young people who completed them. And the average sum score was 39. The range is 16 to 60. So, and then if you look at the scaled score, so on a scale of 1 to 5, kids scored around 3.28, around the middle of the scale regarding their future orientation. A lot of variability on that again. And we wanted to sort of take a quick peek at the degree to which their future orientation was at all connected to their attendance. And this is a little bit kind of a mixed picture here. We do see that the average future orientation across the sites was 3.53. And these are the quartiles in terms of attendance. So the first quartile, the bottom quartile, that's the kids who attended the fewest sessions, were kind of low. There was a big bump for kids in the second quartile, which was around half to 3/4 of the sessions that in the group. Their future orientation scales jumped. And then we had kind of a dip. So kids in the third quartile, that's kids who attended a lot of groups, had a dip in their future orientation and then kind of back up again in the fourth quartile. The more data that we can get, so that's why I'm also asking if sites do have kids that they still have in group and can collect future orientation scales on, we would love to get more of these to get a better idea of how these things might affect the young people. I will say that that mean scale score of 3.53, again, is above the average. So if you look at it, it's a scale of 1 to 5. So it is above the average in terms of future orientation. This measure has been used to look at things like risky behavior, impulsive and risky behavior, alcohol and drug use and other risky behavior, and its relationship to future orientation. And some research has shown that the more future-oriented young people are, the less they are likely to engage in risky behavior. And one of the reasons why we wanted to collect this data is because we think, again, we're not saying that it changes young people's future orientation, but what we hope we get out of KEY and that young people will look at is, think differently about their goals, think differently about the direction in their lives, and at least get them on that path to thinking about future goals. So that's why we wanted to sort of mention and talk a little bit about future orientation. Any questions so far? Okay, so to move along, so interview data. I, again, had brief interviews with some of our sites, and I'd be happy to conduct more. So if you all want to open up, you can contact me, and we can try to set up additional site visits to meet with staff and facilitators who've done the group or over the phone. But I asked questions around three sets of questions. One was the adequacy of the training, the ease of implementation or what implementation challenges people had, and then sort of the effectiveness and sort of what outcomes people saw as a result of KEY. So in terms of the adequacy of the training in general, most people said that the training was adequate, that it was sufficient in terms of getting them ready and prepared to run the groups. Some suggestions that sites gave with regards to the training was more time to review the curriculum. So as part of the training, sites had an opportunity to look at the curriculum, work with it a little bit, think through it a little bit, and plan groups. So that was one thing that they wanted a little bit more of, more training on basic group skills, possibly, and then some consultation or follow-up opportunities to have individual site consultation and follow-up to talk about implementation and how things are going. And then someone else also was suggested to use experienced sort of KEY facilitators to do the training. People who've had experience using it. In terms of implementation, again, the questions were around how easy was it to use the KEY, and again, in general, people said that it was that the workbooks made it easy to teach, that the material that we covered and the content of the workbooks was right, and that it covered important areas for young people. There were questions about the utility of the workbook, so there was a lot of variability across sites in terms of their feelings about how much the workbook is useful. So in some cases, sites did find that little bit of resistance and or tension around getting the young people to actually use the workbook, to engage with the material. So there was, again, some variability in that across the sites. And one of the things that I think I found interesting in terms of doing the workbook reviews and looking at how much, there was a lot of variability in that. So some sites and some young people did very little work, and some sites were able to get the young people to complete quite a bit of the exercises and activities in the workbook. So there was a lot of variation. Some sites also used, instead of the workbooks, used things like PowerPoint slides and handouts. So they took some of the content in order to make it a little bit easier for young people to engage with the material. Some used videos to supplement the workbook material. So in terms of implementation, there were sites that got creative in terms of how they presented the information, but in general they felt that the workbook content was appropriate, was useful for the young people. Again, the question is, how much do they actually engage with it? The other issue that came up was the early engagement difficulties. So engagement activities needed to be supplemented early on to get young people to, do more sort of group building and activities to get to know each other. So, so there was some early engagement. I'll talk a little bit later about what we hope to do about that, but sites, again, had to get a little bit creative at the beginning. In the middle of the program, again, folks found the lessons were helpful, the topics were helpful, some more than others, of course, but no one sort of suggested that there were any topics that we needed to get rid of. It was just some went over well with the young people and some didn't. Some sessions and lessons had to be condensed because there was overlap. And folks talked about the importance of, again, as the group went on, allowing young people to have ownership of the group and get more involved in leading. Also, in terms of implementation, some of the challenges. The challenges were group challenges, interpersonal relationships or interpersonal problems between group members. And then, as I said, needing to branch out from the workbook and possibly take topics to deeper areas. And then all kinds of logistical issues that had nothing to do necessarily with key in the workbook, but things like breaks and time and scheduling and all of that. Some supports that people found helpful in terms of getting the program going and making it more successful is the use of incentives and having agencies support facilitators in, making incentives available and making it more easy for young people to engage, like having food and getting transportation. Support staff availability. This was also particularly important in programs that are residential. So having other support staff be able to support the young people in the group to maintain it, to stay in the group, to do, in some cases, to help them with the workbooks and doing the work in the workbooks. And then the other supports with, again, the co-facilitator roles, having co-facilitators who work together, who are able to, team together and also provide different aspects. One of the sites, for example, talked about this workbook is in many ways didactic. And so having a combination of someone who can be a little bit more didactic with someone who can be a little bit more process-oriented was kind of critical. And then one of the sites talked about youth and peer support, having a support person or youth in the group as well who can also help facilitate and help the young people connect. And then in terms of effectiveness, many of the sections, again, as I said, no one talked about any sections of the workbook that were not helpful, but there were some that were better. So again, as I've mentioned already, overall people felt that the content was good. Again, the young people responded differently to different sessions, but that there weren't any sections that needed to be removed. Relationships, again, a typical theme, and this kind of we knew going into the project, but it was kind of confirmed, is that the section on relationships was a critical one and one that most young people really got a lot out of. They really were engaged with the discussions and the material around, romantic relationships, interpersonal relationships, family relationships. And then other sections that people were saying were kind of critical was negative and positive thinking, the coping skills, and mental health treatment, and talking about mental health treatment. A lot of variation in terms of some of the other topics. I think those depended on the site and what the focus of the site. So especially in inpatient settings or residential settings, talking about treatment could be difficult, but also could be positive. And then some of the outcomes. In general, a lot of the sites that I visited talked about things like socialization, group cohesion, having young people, because of the nature of the workbook and getting them involved in discussions that they all had something to share about, made it something, again, that allowed some kids to come out of their shells a little bit more, socialize more with each other. Some sites talked about goals and the connection, less so. So I think one of the things that we do hope for is that this would allow young people to think about goals with regards to these various areas of their lives. But some people did mention that they could see young people sort of thinking about goals, translating what they learned in group into goals and individual treatment. So there was some of that, but the degree to which it was across all sites and across all kids is still up for discussion. So group supports, I just wanted to share some of these. One of our sites did a lot of work, and as I said, because it's very didactic, using all kinds of tools to keep kids engaged not only in the activities but to think about the topics outside. So Kids Oneida, one of our sites, did a lot of use of newsprint and large stickies to have discussions and to facilitate discussions around these various topics so you could see all the kinds of stuff. And they talked about, every week having these available for the young people in the group to keep them engaged in the topics. And then we also have, again, from Kids Oneida, they were sharing a little bit of some of the additional supplements that they developed. So they're actually, I'll show it here. Oh, here we go. So they actually developed a newsletter, a key newsletter that they're using to talk about the various topics in the curriculum, the importance of self-esteem. They also have conversation starters. This is a newsletter that I believe goes out to families and parents and the young people. So, so they developed a newsletter. And I actually asked Kids Oneida, I hope they're on the call, they can share a little bit more about the newsletter. And then they developed kind of a cheat sheet for asking questions for providers. So they give this to the young people so that as part of the sections on mental health and health and interacting more with doctors and empowering young people to ask questions, they developed these doctor cards so that they have questions that they can think about to ask their doctors. So those are some of the supplements that people developed. And so with that said, I wanted to turn it over to program updates. As I said, there were a couple of sites. I'd like to get feedback from others, but there were a couple of sites that I asked to say a few words about, again, a summary of their program participation and successes, and also, more importantly, their future, like what they learned and how they're going to do key in the future. So I wanted to find out, I know Monique, you said you were on the call, and from Pedersen Craig.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Charles is with you, but if you can share a little bit about, again, your experiences and focus, as I said, sort of your next step and kind of what you learned from your initial implementation of Key and what you think you're going to do differently or in the next round or round.
Okay. Actually, we had a pretty good turnout with Key. For the most part, the youth that started with us completed the program. We did have some difficulties, like we spoke with you about, as far as the workbook. A lot of our youth wanted to talk about the issues more, didn't really want to write things out. So that's something we're going to try to work on, trying to, finding different ways to engage them so that maybe they'll want to utilize the workbook. Charles and I am sure will start thinking of some different things to do. We're planning to start another group up in January, just to start fresh after the holidays and possibly have, some newer youth. We didn't want to start right after we completed this first session because we really didn't have anybody new to start. So that's our plan, to start in January after the holidays, winter break, and such.
Okay. And Monique and Charles and Pedersen Craig, I also, if I can ask you, when we met, you talked a little bit about, so you did something in terms of running the group. You did kind of a hybrid group, right, in terms of the populations that you have.
Yeah.
And you said you had some thoughts about how you might do that differently. Could you say a little bit about that?
We actually had youth from our residential programs as well as youth from waiver who are, still at home. We were thinking about possibly splitting the group to have a group with the waiver youth separate, and then have the two houses, our residential programs, together. That's something we're still trying to figure out, whether or not that would be a good idea, just to have a little bit more diversity, or if we want to keep it with just, our youth in the community residences.
Okay. And I want to take a brief moment. Does anyone have any questions for Monique, Charles, the folks at Pedersen Craig? And so I also asked the folks from Kids Oneida to say a little bit about their future plans, and they also have some very interesting plans around looking at using Key with other populations within their program. So who's on from Kids Oneida?
Hi, Jim. It's Tiffany, and I have Nadia with me, and we're here. And yes, we do. We have some really exciting things in the works. We're currently finishing up a modified Key curriculum that we started after our initial group ended. Our initial group of, it started off with about 10 kids. I think we finished off right around 5 or 6. So we did lose quite a few through discharge. But that ended on November 18th. And then this month we have been asked to go into a local school and do like a modified Key curriculum for their 3rd and 4th and 5th graders. So we're finishing that up this Friday. And what we did is we did 3 weeks. The first week we talked about friendship, and that was the newsletter that you showed that actually went home to all of their parents, like you said. Last week we talked with the kids about responsibility and self-control, and this Friday we will be going there and talking about coping skills. And then after that is over, just like Pedersen-Craig in the new year, we're going to start another full group, probably at the beginning of February, because we're going to do some recruitment with our family service coordinators throughout the month of January. And then after that ends up, we're hoping to wrap it up in June and then start a smaller group with our residential program, which is 8 teenage mothers, pregnant or parenting teens. And we're going to do a short summer group with them based more on parenting skills and those important parts of the Key curriculum. So we've got a whole bunch of different things in the works, kind of.
Great, great. Well, and now I just wanted to open it up. I know there are a number of other sites on, and I wanted to find out if other sites would like to share, again, their experience with Key thus far, but also directions for the future and or feedback that they haven't had a chance to share yet. So does anyone want to share their experiences?
Hi,
don't make me start calling names. Okay, great.
Hi,
I was going to start calling out participants, but go ahead, Julie.
Okay, it's Julie and Roseanne from Dutchess County. We run 2 groups. One is the Teen Challenge program, and the other is our young adult program. Teen Challenge, the 14 to 18. The young adult is our 18 to 25. Something a little different with our groups is that when they enroll as a member in our group, they can continue for as many years as they would like with the age limit. So we could have someone come in at 14 and they oftentimes will stay till 18. That group's been running 15 years. The other group, our young adult group, this is our 3rd year in the running, and the 18 to 25-year-olds. We had good success, I would say, with Key. I'll have Roseanne speak to a few things that she did which were very good in terms of incorporating art into the program. There was a lot of sharing, a lot of support amongst the kids, a lot of friendships formed outside of the group as far as providing support to one another. We saw a lot of some of the kids were very excited with the resume writing and had asked for some assistance after the lesson was over as well, applying for employment, receiving employment, which was really terrific, kids doing some community service. And that's a piece that is already built into both of our transition programs. Not only do we do the lessons, we also meet up and above the group night, and we also do community service for teen group. We do a couple of dozen community services a year, and then about a half a dozen or more for our young adults. So that piece was really vital as well. And so we wanted to encourage that possibly maybe instituting maybe some community service within the KEY program, because we find it to be really terrific as far as relationship building, but not only that, building the young person's self-esteem through going out into the community and being validated for what they're offering to the community. Let's see, Roseanne, did you want to speak on the art pieces that you did when it came to the mental health lesson?
Yeah, I told you last time that I did the canvas art and to draw their mental illnesses as monsters, which they really liked. And we've done other things. I noticed, like with the KEY book, I have to pull other activities out of it. Otherwise, the kids tend to feel like it's school outside of school.
Right.
So I've done things like other handouts, like adult coloring books for the relaxation. And then we've done yoga for the stress and different other art projects and like YouTube videos, documentaries. I know one section that we did, the drug section, it was kind of, they didn't really, like they understood it and the information was very good. There were some parts that weren't applicable to them. One of the worksheets that we went over, it was a bunch of questions like asking if they were able to stop drinking or smoking, and they never have, like it doesn't apply to them. So we kind of just ran through the worksheet and they didn't know what to put.
Okay.
A lot of the younger kids.
Right.
Right. And then
other sites had similar feedback as well in terms of the fit of some of the topics with their young people. So, and of course, but please continue. No.
Well, yeah, other than that, I thought it was a great information and a great foundation to teach them.
We'll continue.
Great.
And Jim, we'll continue to use it along with, we also work with 3 other curriculums. We used KEY exclusively this time around. Still have 2 more lessons to go through, and we will complete them in January and a little bit of February, I believe.
No, we're almost in 18.
Oh, 18.
So we're almost done.
18 to 21 we have to do still. Yep. So we should be done by
Great.
January. Great. And we'll continue to use the KEY curriculum. I have one question. I can't remember what it is now. Let's see. Well, if I think of it, it just kind of slips through my mind. It was about one of the forms that you had asked if
the future orientation. The future orientation scale.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where that is. Is that in the book?
I'll send it. It's on our website. It's on our website. So and I'll share the link with you at the end. But also I can send it to you. I can send it to you just in case. That would be great. A couple of things that you're, and thank you Roseanne and Julie for that presentation. A couple of things that your that the information you gave prompted in my mind is please send anything that you think that you did, that you supplemented, that you added into the curriculum. Please send it along to me. Again, especially if you think it's sort of one of those things that it was very successful and everyone should do, because, and I'll talk a little bit about later in terms of what we're going to do with the next edition of KEY. But yes, send anything that you have. Especially your ideas around community service. I think those are great ideas, and you can think about getting them involved. I agree with you. That would be an important piece for programs that are looking for opportunities to get kids out into the community.
Thank you.
And and the other thing that you're sharing prompted me to think about is I wanted to share on behalf of Amber Rosencrantz, one of our participants. She ran our program at the Ontario ARC. For those of you who don't know, ARCs are typically programs that work with young adults, people with intellectual disabilities and or developmental disabilities. So she ran a program there, and I thought this was incredibly impressive. She ran a program there for her young adults using KEY, but she used KEY as part of her work prep program. So she had a program that she ran for people in her population who were preparing for the world of work. She used Key. She used it, she said it was very successful. She said all of the topics in there really work for preparing young adults for jobs. And so she was very successful, and I have to say that in terms of the workbook reviews that I've done, she was able to get her young adults to complete so much of that workbook. She said they were very much engaged with the material, and she said the curriculum worked nicely for that. So I think that made me think, again, for anyone thinking about those kinds of programs, it's also, you know, we think about it as a therapeutic program as well, but in terms of job readiness, she found it extremely useful for that, for her program, in terms of what she's doing for job readiness. Anyone else want to share about their program?
Hi, it's Danielle from Federation of Pros.
Hey, Danielle.
Hi. So I just think that all of the information was really helpful. You know, the younger adults got a little stumped sometimes with some of the topics, finding it a little dull, but we were able to find different activities to engage them a little bit more. But I think overall, just having them think about the different topics that might not come up in other groups that we offer here was helpful.
Great. Great. Others, and actually, again, the other, you just said something that reminded me, again, going back to the experience of the folks at the Ontario ARC. One of the things that helped them, so the big question I had with regards to people with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities completing the material was, you know, sort of how to, and she said that, of course, they had a lot of supports, people in the group who helped them complete the worksheets and things like that, which is something that other programs have said, having someone available, having other support staff available. And it's an ongoing problem, Danielle, in terms of getting them to engage and complete the material. But I bring it up because it is doable, but we still have a little work and thinking to do around how to present the information and how to use it. So anyone else want to share their experiences and or future plans? Well, I will sort of move on. If anyone does want to share anything, please just chime in. But again, I putting on, well, actually, let me move on to that. So the next steps for Key. We're going back to the drawing board in some ways. This is a learning collaborative. And again, you all have, the basic message I'm hearing is that the product is good. It's useful. The content is really good. We may need to do some work around either activities or how the information is presented or how it's used. So what we want to do is, one thing, of course, as I've already mentioned, if you have activities that you used, things that you've done that have been successful and helpful in getting the young people engaged with the material and, again, supporting better outcomes, please send it along. We'll be looking at that. We've already gotten a lot of information, even through the mid-project webinar, about ideas. So anything that you have, please send it along to us, a description of an activity or an actual, anything else that you've shared, videos, other kinds of things that you use to supplement the activities with. Please send them along. We're willing to look at any and all possibilities. So one of the things that I think is clearly going to be necessary is looking at the workbook and developing a separate facilitator's guide. So all these ideas that you have of alternate activities or supplements to the program, I think, will go into a separate facilitator's guide, and then the information that young people can have through the workbook will be available, obviously, separately for them. And then, as I said, we're going to have to look at alternative forms of presentation. The folks at Pedersen Craig, they said, is it possible, to think about, something like an app. I don't know if we have the resources to do that, but it's an interesting idea. Because again, I think the feeling is that the content is helpful, the content is useful, the topics are helpful and useful, but it's the workbook itself that can be a little bit difficult to get young people to engage with. So I think that's a little bit of what we'll have to do some thinking around. Is there an alternate form of getting young people the content that's more engaging to young people? But I think the idea of a separate facilitator's guide with activities and sort of more of ideas that facilitators can use for engagement activities and or other activities that help to prompt or further young people's learning is going to be, that for sure is going to happen. I mentioned here a National Learning Collaborative, so there's an agency, the organization that's a sort of national agency of mental health providers is also interested in looking at KEY. One of the reasons why we were collecting additional data is to try to see if we could add some outcomes that we can use to bring this out on a national level, possibly another national learning collaborative, and possibly another local learning collaborative. As I said, you've made many suggestions. We have some changes to make, and so we're going to go through those changes and possibly have not possibly, if we make those changes and make the modifications that we're talking about, trying to have another learning collaborative and have you all use the materials that you've helped to develop. We're also thinking about research possibilities and also maintaining contact with you all. So I really want to stress that last part. This is our last sort of formal activity with the Learning Collaborative. The website that we have will keep open, so the website will be available. If there's resources on there that you can want to go back and look at, we will also probably work a little bit with the website to clean it up and make it a little bit easier sort of for folks to find resources. And as I said, your ideas of additional activities we can add in there and put on there for others to use and share. If sites need, also of course remember that on the site there is the PDF of the workbook. So if you need to print out workbooks for the future, I'm going to check, I can't promise, but I'm going to check to see if we have budget to print additional workbooks for those of you who are thinking of starting new groups. I can't promise that right now, but I'll look into it and see if we can make additional workbooks available, because I know you all ordered them. So those are some of the sort of the future of KEY. And as I said, the website will be kept open, and you all can contact me if you have any questions. And the other piece is ongoing data collection. So for those of you who weren't able to get us data yet, again, we can use it. So please send your data along as you finish groups. As I mentioned, I will also send any of you who need it the future orientation scale so we can get more of that data. And that's the KEY website information. And on there, those are all the things that you can find on there. Okay. Any sort of final thoughts or questions or comments?
We're going to meet with Kaylee.
Okay. Well, if there aren't, again, I want to thank you all for your participation in KEY. It's been a wonderful experience. I've learned a lot, and I want to thank you all for sharing all of the things that you've learned and done in running the groups with us. And as I said, I will remain available to anyone who sort of needs any material or needs any support in terms of implementing KEY in the future in your sites. But again, I want to thank you all for being a part of this learning collaborative, and I wish you all well in your future work with KEY and all your other work.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.